presence in nature. What do I mean by that, and how do you attain that, and why is it important? So in our culture, oftentimes when we go outside, and with the best of intentions, we go outside with a specific mission in mind. We're going to do a bike ride, a trail run. We're going to go looking for birds, going to go fishing, whatever it is, hiking through the mountains to see the great views. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But I think oftentimes we already have a preconceived notion of what we want to get out of our experience. And it's almost as if we're trying to pull something or extract something. And I've learned over many years, a much better way to approach nature is to go in with an open or a clear mind and be awake and ready for whatever nature wants to give us, which typically is very different from what my thoughts would be about what I want to get out of something. In fact, in some cases, nature may give me something that really upsets me. As an example, if the weather turns bad on me and I, have this idea of doing a beautiful hike and looking at all the fall foliage and the brilliant sunlight, whatever it is. And I think when that happens, not only does it ruin our experience of what we wanted, but also then we're not open to what nature is trying to present us. And so if our goal instead just comes to be open and to be present to nature, then the question arises, how do we do that? Well, obviously, rhetorical question. The first one is, let's try not to go in with preconceived notions. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have an objective for our time in nature. We're not going to a specific place. For example, if I'm going fishing, obviously I'm going to catch fish. But how that experience manifests and whether I feel like it's a good day about how many fish I catch or how big they are, and the weather, whatever it is, really that's the part I need to lay aside. And I may have a very different experience about seeing some other animals or wildlife or other species, or maybe catching a fish that is very unusual in terms of the species or just the circumstances around it. And when I do that again, I'm rewarded with things that oftentimes I never expected. A good example of this was very recently I was out fishing, and it was quite slow, but the scenery was just amazing. And I just decided to tune into that, explored the little stream I was on. And then also, I started paying more attention to the few fish I was catching. And I noticed something, because in this particular clear water stream, and there's some aquatic plants, one of them's called coontail, and every fisherman down here knows about it. Great habitat for fish. But this particular stream had a lot of coontail in it. And as I caught a couple of fish, and they were small, rather than just going, that's a half-pound bass, throw it back in, instead, I actually looked at it and I started noticing, because there was so much coontail, and as the name indicates, it looks like a raccoon's tail, and it's long, and in this part of season anyway, it was a darker brown. And so I looked at these fish that I caught that were using that as camouflage, and these were largemouth bass, and they had adapted themselves so that on the side that's normally whitish, kind of pale green, as you went up to the top of the fish, it actually transitioned to first this kind of golden color and then a brown on top. And the brown was to blend in, so you couldn't see them as easily from above like predators' birds, because they looked the same color as coontail. And that blew me away. I had not seen that. Now, I'd seen very dark largemouth bass before, because they'll do that in darker waters. You have a lot of tannins. But over here, I hadn't seen that before. At least I hadn't noticed it. And it was amazing how beautiful it was. And I was just blown away that, I go down 2 pools below, there's no coontail. The fish don't have this coloration. I go up just a little ways, and here they are with this gold and then golden brown, almost dark brown on top. So that's one thing. If I had just been obsessed with how many fish I was trying to catch or the size of them, I would have missed that. And it really meant something to me, and I already have an awe for nature, but it even heightened that in this case. So those are the little things and experiences that you can have when you pay more attention to what you're doing without having or being tied to an objective. Another tip I have for being more present in nature is to do things a little differently than you typically do. So if you have a routine, you go out, and not saying that routine is bad, anything wrong with it. You may have gotten a lot of value out of that in the past, but is to change it up. So maybe if you are going out with someone in a group or a couple people going for a hike, maybe you go solo, or maybe you space out along the trail, and then maybe compare experiences after the fact, from the person in front to the person who, let's say, is 30 yards behind, and the person who's another 30 yards behind that. Or a lot of people socialize in nature. Again, not saying there's anything wrong with that, but anytime you make noise, first of all, you scare off animals, and secondly, when you're talking and conversing, you're not paying attention, right? So you're almost certainly going to miss a lot, and sometimes some amazing things that you otherwise would have wanted to pay attention to. I personally missed seeing a margay one time because my wife and I were talking on the trail, and they're very hard to see. This was in Costa Rica, and we were just oblivious to what was going on, and some people later told us, and I wanted to bang my head against a tree. One experience I had in particular stands out, and it was when I was with someone. We were doing a hike, and it just kind of came to me before when I was thinking about being present, is what if we did a completely silent hike? No talking. You know, we walked in close proximity, but no verbal conversation. And it was the most amazing hike, short hike, you know, maybe an hour and a half, something like that. It was up a small mountain that I've had to this day. And I can't really describe or put it into words, but I noticed so much more, but there was a presence both I had to what was going on around me, but also to the other person. And even though we had no verbal communication, just by occasionally looking at each other, it was almost like we were being telepathic and trading thoughts without saying anything. And it was just a deeply rewarding experience. And I think that was because the active mind wasn't, doing this, right? It was more in receptive mode. And so in a way, both of us were sending out messages, but it was more in terms of just being appreciative of the landscape that was around us. And it was a beautiful place. It was in a rainforest up above the ocean. And there was just so much it was taking in. Just like right now, I can hear the wind behind me rustling the leaves. And I was just able to really tune into that and appreciate it and absorb it. And then look over at my friend who was having, I don't want to say the same experience, but a related experience. And it was magical. That's the one word I can put to it. It was just magical. And so, again, that's not the only way to do it. There's all kinds of different ways to have an experience like that. But the key is, again, to put down your normal routine or thoughts or way you carry yourself and do something different that puts you in a different disposition. When we do this and we're present, we get understanding. And I define understanding, and some of the ancient traditions define it as knowledge, which of course are facts, learning skills from your previous experiences, someone else telling something about nature, having a mentor, whatever the case is. Knowledge plus your presence, or what sometimes is referred to as your being, your level of being in that moment. And that level of being, and for all of us, particularly in Western culture, is determined largely of where our heads are and where our emotions are, and even how we're carrying our body. Because remember, how we carry ourselves in nature, animals pick up on that. We know the larger animals, and mammals in particular, and even small to medium-sized mammals, but birds pick up on that as well. And for example, if I'm walking in really tense, or I'm staring like this, because again, I'm a predator, I have binocular vision, that just radiates out a sense of fear, or that I might be dangerous to wildlife that I come across. So that right there is going to change my experience. But also our thoughts particularly. And again, Western culture, we have so many things going on in our life, so many plans. I have to get this done, and there's worries, and what about this tomorrow, and what's coming up? All of that in our mind, actually, when that's running, those programs, that prevents us oftentimes, particularly when we engage with it, from experiencing what may be right in front of us. And it's really a tragedy in a sense, because some of those experiences are profound. And of course, because you don't know what you don't know, how many have I missed, particularly earlier in my life, because I had that going on? So I like to do something before I even go out called a sense meditation, where I basically just stand still, I step outside, and I tune in with all my senses, with my ears, with my eyes, my smell, which is our weakest sense. Also, even right now, the wind is blowing. It's a hot wind. What does that feel like on my skin? And just trying to tap into that, because that lowers the thoughts. Additionally, just spending that time by taking a few moments, those thoughts start to come down. Or at least, even if they pop up, I'm less likely to be attached to them. If I try to zip out immediately in nature and have some experience, and I haven't done that, this, what I would refer to as this letting go process, I'm far more likely to be engaged and just run with those thoughts. And again, miss out on, what nature is trying to present me. And then also our emotions. And of course, emotions are very much tied to thought. One begats the other. It's probably usually thoughts, but maybe not. And that's tied to the body, because obviously if we have a very disturbing thought, or for that matter, a very pleasant thought, something that's ecstatic, let's say, that changes our emotion, which changes how we carry ourselves. And even if we're, let's say, not disturbed in our thoughts, but we're really excited, we might bound through the wilderness. Again, that can set off alarm bells to other animals. So I try to feel my emotions as well. I try to observe them. I'm not saying anything's right or wrong, but I just try to let go of those. Have them come up, pass through me. When you do both of those consciously for, just a couple of minutes each one, you may have to remind yourself if you find yourself engaged with a particular thought or a really strong emotion comes up. But then the last thing is relaxing your body. One of the mentors I studied under, John Young, says, imagine that there's a rope tied to the top of your head, like the crown of your head. It's pulling you up. Underneath that rope is a coat hanger, and you're just suspended from that coat hanger. Or sometimes it's referred to as the lazy surveyor approach. It's going to loosen tension in your body, and that's going to communicate a very different presence to the animals. So when we're able to do that, we establish more present. We're going to be here and now and paying attention, and much more likely to tune into our senses, much more likely to open up to whatever nature wants to present us. Again, maybe it's an unexpected bird that comes close to us, or some other animal that we might have walked right past that we would get learnings from. And even if we're out in nature doing activities, like we're fishing, or it could even be gardening, or some other activity, it could be a primitive skill. By having this presence mindset, we'll be doing our activity, but it has two advantages. It becomes much more likely, again, we're going to recognize something else that happens while we're doing that activity, but also becomes much more meditative, because we're not caught up in our mind and our emotions and the sensations of our body. And that's very relaxing, can be very peaceful, certainly is a de-stressing activity to do, and really can reinvigorate you. Whether you do it in the morning, a break at work in the middle of the day if you have access to a great place in nature like I do right now, it's the middle of the day, or after work. If you can do that, obviously, and bring that mindset to it, then you're going to get those effects from it. Then, when you incorporate that with learning about nature, and I'm not saying you have to go and read a ton of books, but maybe you have field guides with you, or you see something, you look it up at home later, you ask somebody, you watch a video, then you're adding the knowledge part to it. And so the next time you go out, you have understanding. You do the same practices to put yourself in the same position, and now maybe nature presents you with something, you see it, you recognize it, right, because you're present, and now also you know what it means. And that's where you get these tremendously rewarding experiences that, for me, add meaning to the whole journey. And that's, I think, one of the most fulfilling, maybe it's the most important thing of spending time in nature. We know the benefits. It makes you feel better, right? It's peaceful. But when you have those aha moments, and sometimes it may be from an experience that is years before that you didn't understand whatever, but you see something later on, you're able to connect it, be in that present space, and then you have this aha moment. It's like, oh, that's what that was, or that's what that meant. That's why that was meaningful. And it becomes very significant. And I think we're all looking for more significance in our day-to-day life, again, with all the stresses we have. So try that. Next time you go out, work on your presence. Go through those exercises. Do a sense meditation. Try to let go of your thoughts, your emotions, and relaxing your body. And then be open to whatever nature presents you rather than just trying to extract something out of it. And I think you'll be amazed.